In our culture, self-love is something that is not often discussed. Rather, we often rely on validation from friends, family, and peers. Because of this, I grew up with a flawed belief that beauty begets attention. That the person in the room with the most attention also had to be the most beautiful. In my mind, I believe that this person would, in turn, have the most love from others, and as a result, from themselves. Because of this, I devoted much of my early teenage years to becoming that beautiful person by spending time, money, and effort on countless cosmetics, ridiculous fad diets, and unoriginal fashion trends. We were taught from a young age that the only way to be accepted is to be considered beautiful. With all the hours that I dedicated to catching the attention of other people, I expected my self-worth to increase. I expected, as most have at some point in their life, to find fulfillment by changing myself to suit society's expectations, in turn receiving external validation. In some moments, it legitimately felt as if my inner happiness increased. However, it would soon regress the moment I couldn't get quite as many boys to look at me, or quite as many girls to look up to me. I was in an illusory competition with myself to perpetually beat a high score of vanity, because I was told that beauty was happiness. But I wasn't happy. As I grew and matured, I thought about what the saying, "love yourself," truly meant, and in turn, how to receive happiness from it. When I considered societal and cultural expectations, I noticed that social media had its own definition of self-perfection. It allows us to connect to millions of people and platforms with a single swiping motion, and yet it can also contribute to our own insecurity. In a second, we can pass through pages of models and ads. Meanwhile, the next, dozens of motivational speakers and self-help platforms pitching for positivity. For most people, loving oneself means setting time aside for a wholesome moment, treating themselves to a nice meal, perhaps allowing themselves to indulge in hobbies such as painting or reading. But is it really the picture-perfect moment seen on Pinterest? On social media, I notice that society elevates late-night searches and luxuries as agents of self-worth, and that its true substance often got lost in what is now a be good, feel good, all-encompassing self-love movement. This is the mainstream culture, where money feeds into indulging yourself, and the harder you work, the more worthy you are. This would imply that you're only worthy if you work enough and essentially pay to play. And this is only further compounded if you're the average teen, because I know that the aesthetic self-love most are familiar with could never apply to me. I'm in no way, shape, or form a millennial who dazzles themselves in ritual-like face masks and bubble baths while sipping rosé on the weekend. And frankly, most people aren't. And this is only further compounded. However, true self-love can actually have a healthier definition. According to psychologist Dr. Andrea Brand, self-love means having a high regard for your own well-being and happiness. It means that when you love yourself, you accept your so-called weaknesses and appreciate these shortcomings as something that makes you who you are. But what if self-love isn't actually a state or feeling per se, but a constant and often conscious process? This is how psychology today describes self-love, stating that self-love is really comprised of 4 parts: self-awareness, self-worth, self-esteem, and self-care. Self-awareness, the first step, is being aware of your thoughts, how they affect your emotions, and how your emotions cause you to act. The next aspect, self-worth, is about realizing that everyone has value, including yourself. The third, self-esteem, is about being happy with who you are. And the last, self-care, is about taking care of who you are. Because like I said before, self-love is a process which never truly ends. One must always remember to love oneself, to validate oneself, and to take care of oneself. So, how do we start this process of becoming more self-aware? We start by taking ourselves into account, by asking ourselves, how do you think, speak, act on a day-to-day basis? How do you act towards yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Notice in your answers how you define your own value. Are you respecting yourself? Are you content? Are you taking care of yourself? What does that mean for you? Yet, it's hard to answer these questions, especially as a kid. Therefore, it should come to no surprise that many people our age and younger, myself included, struggle with self-love. I grew up in a single-parent household where peace and beauty were the only attributes of love's existence. Attributes I never seemed to fully attain. How could I practice this elusive self-love when the only thing I was told about it was that vanity equaled love? As we go through high school, the cliche moment of spotting a girl rushing to the restroom, crying with mascara running down her face and unhappy with her image is commonplace. Equally so, walking down hallways, overhearing a group of guys harshly criticizing their own gym physique and how they aren't big enough is the norm. We are so quick to speak ill of ourselves, it's normalized to the point that it's become accepted commentary. The true self-love of being considerate and respectful of oneself is nowhere to be found. You'd assume that with such a critical issue affecting our society, a substantial amount of scholarly work would have been done on this topic. Yet, while doing my research for this talk, most of the journal articles I found were either decades old, excessively focused on narcissism, or were overtly religious. The absence of this information made one thing fairly clear. Scholars simply don't write enough about self-love. They don't think it's important, and who can blame them? With all the misconceptions about how easy self-love is, it's no wonder that further work isn't done on it. But that's harmful. Because when adults don't give importance to self-love, kids won't either. So how do we, everyday teens, redefine the societal expectations of self-love? We start with ourselves. To champion self-love, self-awareness must come first. The moment that I began to ponder self-love, I began my own journey towards it. When I realized that what society feeds to us is actually an impersonalized misconception, I began to accept myself. As I stand here today, I am still on this journey, challenging myself to define what self-love means to me. Growth and movement, which only comes through brutal honesty. Something I had trouble with while putting together this talk. I had trouble trusting myself, trusting others, trusting the process. Because it's sometimes hard to recognize our own worth. I thought I couldn't speak on this topic because I hadn't mastered it yet. But self-growth is not linear. It's messy. It's dynamic. It's raw. And the fact that I'm standing before you today is, in and of itself, an act of self-love. Thank you.